Can you tell me how long we should stay on each segment? Should it be...
I will tell you the cue is to watch his finger.
Okay.
So what will happen is, not that one, not that one. But what will happen is when he's watching the time, so when we're getting to the point that we need to transition, you'll see him going into position where he's ready to close that segment out.
And I'll point,
I appreciate that. I am. I can tell. This is really special. All of the equipment is really incredible.
This is like happy day for him.
Oh my goodness.
It is.
It is. It would make, what would make me happier?
What?
If I got paid for this.
I know, right?
That would make me happier.
One day we will.
Yeah, maybe by episode 512, I'll collect a check.
I know.
Welcome to episode 52 of Black, White, and Blue in the South, the podcast for discussing Democratic politics with a Southern flair. I'm Bill Kimler.
I'm Jamil Brooks.
And I'm Michael Ayer.
And those voices are coming to you from our recording back on January 26th. You see, Jamil and I had recorded for over 2 hours with Michael, so we had no choice but to break that up into a two-parter. And today, you're getting part 2. Normally, you would have gotten this episode 2 weeks after the prior one, but the Philadelphia Eagles
Go Birds!
Screwed things up, and I'm going to be traveling out of town to enjoy Super Bowl Sunday with my family. So we're releasing part 2 early before the items we discussed get too far out of date. And already so much has happened since we recorded. Tragic airline disasters, tragic White House disasters, tariffs and Musk and the U.S. Treasury and the cabinet clown hearings, not to mention all the stuff happening on the home front. It's been a year full of Januaries for sure. So Jamil and I will be back after the Eagles' victory to help make sense of whatever clustermuck is going on. But right now, let's get back to our conversation with Michael Ayer, candidate for South Carolina Democratic Party 3rd Vice Chair, already in progress. Well, Jamil, we've been at this episode for 13 hours already today.
I know. I looked down and I went, whoa.
But there's so much news to cover.
Well, we got
like these last 2 weeks, I feel like we've already gone through 4 years of a Trump presidency in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah. And there's so many things we didn't cover.
So we're going to do a whirlwind tour of the news. I'm going to beg us not to go too deep into any subject. We're going to try to keep light, give our audience the information they need and maybe some context. So we're going to have to do a whirlwind. Michael, can you stay for this?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Here we go.
For up to the minute reports, stay tuned to this station. Now the news.
Deportations have begun, Jamil and Michael. The White House and the ICE enforcement agency, they posted a statement claiming that they were only going after violent criminals who were here illegally. What has been the actual result?
Anybody that looked like they fit the part.
That's what's going on. So already we're hearing reports of ICE raids throughout, primarily the blue states, by the way. And they're picking up people. In one case in New Jersey, they picked up and detained a U.S. citizen from Puerto Rico who was also a military veteran. But you know what? He didn't have his ID on him, so he got detained for hours and was questioned by ICE. The Navajo Nation is reporting that they are being stopped and asked to produce their papers. So basically, we have entered into a world of walking while brown and being forced to identify yourselves with papers. Otherwise, your freedoms will be taken away temporarily.
That's right. Black people used to that, though. We've always fit the description.
Are you saying welcome to the club?
That's it. You fit the description.
My goodness. So question on the suspicions of being brown. So they're starting to round up people. So it's not just about violent criminals. And you know what's funny? I actually follow a couple of Spanish-speaking advocates on Facebook.
Okay.
And I look at the comments. So somebody will post, here is some helpful hints about what to do if you're questioned by ICE and so on. And the comments are all in Spanish. So I turn on the old Google Translator. You would not believe the number of Trump and MAGA supporters in Spanish supporting this, because they are repeating the line from ICE saying they're going just after the illegals. they're going after the violent criminals who are here illegally. They're not going after the peaceful ones, which we are seeing all over the country is not the case. They're going after everybody.
Would that encompass the school that they showed up to come in? I don't know if you saw that in the news, but they actually went to one school, and the school called the police department and said, we're not letting them in.
Oh, I think this was in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Right.
How violent are they? They babies.
And of course, in the typical Trump administration fashion, anything they do in a rushed manner is being done very incompetently.
Yeah.
So what's happened is they stuck these, quote, illegals on planes and tried to fly them back to their countries. What's occurred?
And then what did she say? They said their defense was after Mexico rejected them.
All right, so Mexico rejected a flight.
They did not approve for them to land. And after that, the publications that came out from administration is that it was an administrative error. And then right after that, they quickly said, but Mexico did take the 4 other planes that went.
Just today, before we started this recording, Colombia is now reporting. This is the country, Colombia, that they have turned around flights trying to land. You can't just send jets
that's not your country.
to land in other countries without getting everything approved in advance.
You want to get some approval first? No.
I'm telling you what's going to happen. They're just going to start pushing the people out of the planes. Throwing parachutes on them, hopefully.
Oh, my gosh.
And just dropping them off. I mean, that's what they're going to do. You think the Trump administration has any empathy whatsoever for what they're doing?
It takes forever for you to actually get through the process of becoming a citizen and letting people know that you are in these states. But you know how time consuming that is. But when it comes down to ICE going in and just pulling people out, they're not vetting. These people are being shipped off like they're nothing and taken back to countries that they left. And some of our really good citizens, really good people, are a part of the people that's being pulled. You pulled a vet. You pulled a veteran.
There is
a person who fought for you.
You can anonymously send tips as to where illegals might be to ICE, and ICE will show up.
Yes.
So we can send tips to Republican headquarters.
Yes.
We can send tips to,
There's an
Christian
SRO
nationalist
in Greenville.
Yeah.
He's an SRO, and he is sharing the post, and I don't know if you've seen this on social media.
In Lawrence County.
Yeah, he's sharing the post that, hey, if you see anything, this is the number that you call. And he's an SRO.
That's a school resource officer, for those that don't know what that is.
Yes, so you have children in these schools, and he's going to be reporting them. He is going to be reporting those families.
In one state, legislation has been floated to create bounties that the state will pay you for tips that lead to arrests of illegals. So basically, again,
God have mercy.
For those that are supporting this, and especially our brothers and sisters in the Hispanic community who support this, remember, you are not exempt from being pulled over and detained. I will fly right by a police checkpoint. Jamil, you will fly right by a police checkpoint. Michael, you'll probably get pulled over because you're suspicious as all get out. But if you have brown skin, you can expect a 10-time percentage chance you're going to be pulled over for being under suspicion of being an illegal.
And so the red card that you're probably going to mention, but that red card, it advises, and there's a YouTuber out here, and I don't remember his name, but he works to show how you're to conduct yourself if you ever go through an immigration checkpoint. And the number one thing they tell everyone who's going through an immigration checkpoint is to not talk.
So if you look at our show notes, there is a link to a page from the Immigrant Legal Resource Center where you can read and even print out your own red cards and distribute them locally, and I encourage the communities to do so.
Yeah.
It's a very small card, front and back, that gives very specific instructions in multiple languages. So this doesn't just apply to South American or Mexican immigrants. This could apply to Vietnamese or anybody from the Philippines or wherever. This red card provides very simple instructions front and back on what to say, when to say it, and how to conduct yourself to give you the fighting chance that you deserve.
What's next is it's saying don't talk to the ICE, don't open the door, and they want you to show your card through the door, like if they're coming to your home. What we have to position ourselves for is what happens when you don't open that door.
It's like they're like vampires. The rule, if you invite them in, they get to come in, but unless with that invitation, they can't come in.
This is going to be a Clustermuck all over again, but yeah.
Do I have to bleep that? I'm not sure. I have to go.
I said muck. I took out the F and put in.
But even though it still sounded kind of nasty, so I gotta go check.
I think I've said that like twice today, maybe 3 times. My bad, but that's what it is.
All right, next, we're going to hit the very sensitive topic of the January 6th rioters, an event that shook the nation. And in his first week of office, Donald Trump has issued a blanket pardon to every single last one of them, and out of prison they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that make you feel as an American, Michael?
Just bad vibes. It's just not great. Including the previous segment was just adding to just not great feelings in America. I also feel like there's such a connection of being suspicion of being a criminal for some people, and then you cannot at all be considered a criminal for others. That I just feel like is very curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, one historian wrote, this was a Princeton University historian named Julian Zelizer. He wrote, Trump will go to great lengths to protect those who act in his name. This is the culmination of his effort to rewrite January 6th, in this case using his presidential muscle, to free those who were part of a violent assault on the Capitol. And there's no other way to describe it than a violent assault.
I said the same thing. I said, we said this a couple of episodes ago in our other season where we said there is no way you can say you back the blue if you back this foolishness.
So I want to play a clip from Pod Save America where they talk about one individual officer's experience from January 6th.
Oh, wow.
And the people who were just pardoned. So this clip starts with the very end of a Trump interview with Sean Hannity, and then the host of Pod Save America speaks on that.
Okay.
They were very minor incidents.
I'm so angry about this. I want to talk about Michael Fanone for a minute. This is a D.C. police officer. He was beaten within an inch of his life on January 6th. Wasn't even on duty that day. Responded to radio calls for assistance. After he got there, the rioters dragged him down the steps, sprayed chemicals in his face, beat him with pipes, tased him repeatedly in the back of the neck, and said they were going to kill him with his own gun while he said, please, I have kids. He suffered burns, a concussion, traumatic brain injury, and a heart attack. He had to retire. He testified at the January 6th trial. He's gotten threats. His family's gotten threats. He said that as recently as a month ago, his 76-year-old mother was outside gardening, and someone threw human feces on her, a Trump supporter, because of her son. The man who tased Michael Fanone is Daniel Rodriguez from California. He saw Trump call for a protest on January 6th, got on a big group chat, told everyone to bring knives and bear spray to Washington, where he said he would, quote, hang Congress. And after he tased Michael Fanone until he lost consciousness, he wrote on the group chat, quote, tased the fuck out of the blue. And after he pleaded guilty to assaulting an officer with a dangerous weapon, he walked out of the courtroom. He screamed, Trump won. He was sentenced just about a year ago, and now he is free. No shorter sentence, free. And now Michael Fanone is trying to get a protective order because the rioters who were pardoned are now threatening to go after the people who sent them to prison. I don't know what to do with that, Dan.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with that either.
No. But I'm telling you, this whole thought process of this thing that Trump is doing is allowing white nationalists to feel like as long as they do dirt and do it in the name of Trump, they will be forgiven. This is just the beginning of what he has started. How is it that a Capitol police officer is not safe? This is a person that you've got to go to start trouble with in order to get to react to you. He ain't just patrolling down the street. You went to him to start this trouble, and then you've done so much damage. He is creating, and that is what's woken up all of this. You know, you've seen, what's the guy that, the guy from the X people, the X guy, Elon Musk, child. I didn't want to call his name, honey. I didn't want to call his name.
Sorry, I thought you were saying eggs as in like chicken eggs.
I didn't want to call his name. But I mean, you've gotten to the point to where you allow anything that's Nazi-like to be comfortable, to be displayed on the steps of a nation that we built, not that they built. This is a nation that we have built and poured into for years and years and years. And just so Trump gets to pat his chest as if he's been the greatest, he is going to allow this type of sore or infection to fester and bleed out.
So this is something that our own Representative John McCravey on his Facebook page praised the release of Daniel Rodriguez, praised it, said that Trump did a great job by pardoning them. I posted a very short clip showing the violence conducted by these rioters and just a comment saying, sadly now this is no longer an illegal act, right? This is now condoned behavior. And out of the woodwork comes people, family members of mine, people that I know casually. Their position was, oh, come on. One actually said, Bill, you're a smart guy, but I can't believe you're being so dumb about this. You know that this was a setup and that there was a conspiracy afoot to, I don't know. I don't even know what the conspiracy was.
How can people think it's a conspiracy when they have themselves?
He says that they were allowed into the building. They were encouraged to go in there. They were riled up by paid actors.
They were riled up by Trump.
Right. That's the one thing.
And encouraged by Trump.
So one said that. Another came at it from an angle saying, oh, these guys have been in prison, a majority of them for very minor offenses for 4 years, as if the justice system worked where on day one, on January 7th, they were locked up and have been in prison since. You heard this guy, the one that tasered a police officer, was sentenced less than a year ago, barely served time, and now is free to go. That is what the reality is. Yet, the Fox News and the Trump Truth Social and whatever that BS is have got a good portion of this country completely brainwashed to think that January 6th was not Trump's fault.
If we let this continue, we are giving them just what they need. If they don't care about the lives of the Capitol Police,
right,
and they don't respect everything that's associated with it, any uniformed officer that does not align with their way of thought and making sure that they get to carry out their motives, their mission, will be eliminated.
So what are the Blues saying about this, Jamil?
They ain't backing that blue.
No, what are the Blues saying?
What do you mean?
The Police Officers Union have come out with a statement.
Oh, they got a problem with it.
Yes.
As they should, but they initially supported and endorsed Trump.
They did. So they endorsed him, and now the Fraternal Order of Police issued a statement alongside the International Association of Chiefs of Police last week, saying, quote, crimes against law enforcement are not just attacks on individuals or public safety. They are attacks on society and undermine the rule of law. Allowing those convicted of these crimes to be released early diminishes accountability and devalues the sacrifice made by courageous law enforcement officers and their families. Make no mistake about it. Trump sided with violent criminals, as did people like John McCravey and others who support this. Let them walk free, and now these poor officers live in fear for the rest of their days.
Yeah.
And any further attacks is blood on their hands they will not be able to wash.
Yeah.
So while we're on the topic of Trump, and we're going to move to some more fun topics after this one, but we actually had an unexpected warrior for the cause of righteousness step up to the stage in an unexpected way and take the nation by storm. Have you heard about Bishop Mary Ann Edgar Buddy?
Good job.
Oh, my goodness. So there was this prayer service that, first of all, donors had to pay to get into, that the presidents all go to in this case. So there's Trump with his minions sitting in the front row. I'm going to play a clip from Bible scholar Dan McClellan. Now, this is a guy that I listen to religiously, and I mean that pretty seriously, too. He talks about the Bible all the time, but he comes at it he has a podcast called Data Over Dogma.
Okay.
That just resonates with me, being a data guy, right?
It does.
So he's going to talk about what she said, and plus a clip of what she said, but he puts it in context that I think resonates with a lot of people.
Today's Christian nationalists stand condemned by the prophets of the Hebrew Bible and by Jesus in the New Testament. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. And while today's Christian nationalists were not around when the Bible was being written, there were absolutely people around who exploited their religious communities' identity markers and means of costly signaling and credibility enhancing displays to advance their own interests and structure power and boundaries and values
Talks like a professor.
in their favor and over and against the interest of minoritized, marginalized, and oppressed groups. And they are directly condemned by the prophets in the Hebrew Bible and by Jesus in the New Testament. And there's a wonderful example of this going on right now in the folks who are condemning Bishop Mary Ann Edgar Budde, who recently gave a sermon that was attended by President Trump and his squad. And in that sermon, Bishop Budde spoke directly to the president and said,
"Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation. But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger. For we were all once strangers in this land."
Now, this is perfectly in line with the prophetic critique that we find in the Hebrew Bible as well as in the New Testament. This is something Jesus says multiple times in the Gospel of Matthew. "I will have mercy and not sacrifice." The idea being the purpose of the law is to generate mercy and righteousness and a just society. And while there are performative aspects of that law, if we engage in those performative aspects to put our piety on display to the public while privately grinding on the faces of the poor and refusing to come to the aid of the poor and the helpless and the needy and the oppressed and the widow, the performance of those public aspects of the law becomes sinful. That's the prophetic critique that we find in Isaiah, that we find in Micah, that we find in Amos, that we find in Jeremiah, that we find in a number of different places, and that is also taken up by Jesus. It is a critique of those who prioritize the performative features of the law and neglect the weightier matters of the law, namely justice and mercy. And that's all that the good bishop is asking for. Show mercy.
What do you think of that, Michael? How about that clip of Bishop Budde?
It was pretty special. I'm glad that the editors of that video even focused on the reaction shots too. I think that is what stuck out to me. It was immediately the contempt for why do I have to think about this? Why do I have to listen to this person who again is pleading for people's lives and could not be bothered? Yeah. That the head shake at the end. Oh, no, this is not. And again, the small comments from the now president and now vice president to their wives, one of whom is, in first generation immigrant here, right? We were once strangers in this land, and this is not something that I have sympathy for.
I thought the same thing when he looked at Melania, and I thought, well, you were a stranger in this land too.
Would you see Melania smirk?
Yes, and I went, girl, that could have almost been you if you hadn't been in the right place at the right time.
So Michael makes a great point, focusing on the reaction shots of those. And I encourage those of you listening, hop on over to our YouTube page. You can watch this video in our podcast there. Melania smirking. His kids are sitting behind him looking like idiots. J.D. Vance is looking around like...
I hope he wasn't looking at his wife.
Right? No, he was. He was during the thing.
Okay, what'd she say? She should be able to relate to this.
There were some comments that they had, but I wasn't 100% sure what they were saying.
You both are looking at your wives, and your wives could have easily been the group of people that she is pleading for.
So Bishop Buddy has now received the ire of MAGA world, calling her sermon completely inappropriate for a church service.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to include a biblical scholar into the mix.
I had an educator who I almost had to click the unfollow button. A former educator. We taught at the same place, and she said that she felt that this bishop was out of place because that is where she mixed church with politics, and she should have never done that. And I went, so you missing everything that MAGA is doing. They have drenched, the whole MAGA is drenched in a Christian cloak. And you're going to tell me she said something that is all throughout the Bible.
Listen, I just challenge you to walk into one Southern Baptist service and find one preacher up there not talking about politics.
How can you not?
Every last one of them. I've been in them here in the South. They are all very specifically talking politics. They even say vote for X, vote for Y, pray for Z.
Yeah.
And so here is a bishop asking for mercy for those. And now it's become an unwelcome message.
And in that same Bible that they are running around beating people over the head with, there was Queen Esther who went to the king and pleaded for the people to not deny these people their rights to life.
I did not realize you were a biblical scholar.
You never know what your girl know. You never know.
Wow.
It's deep.
So TikTok went down for about 24 hours the weekend before Trump's inauguration.
Distraction.
In a very bizarre set of circumstances. So setting the stage, a law overwhelmingly passed by both Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate and signed by President Biden claimed that TikTok was a national security threat and they had to divest. To explain this the best, this is the best explainer I've come across, was Elmo, the lovable Muppet from Sesame Street. I'm going to play this clip here in the studio. And I don't know how much of it's going to be released in the podcast because it's filthy, Elmo.
No.
It's one of my favorite TikTok accounts. You'll see the full video in its entirety on our YouTube publication of this episode, but for the listening audience, I have to be as family friendly as possible. And if I played the full clip, it would just be one long beep.
It would.
Okay.
It would.
But I have never heard the TikTok issue explained so clearly. So can I play it? Are you okay, Michael?
I just want to clarify that we're going from the words of Jesus and God to now this.
It's a really bad transition.
Elmo. I felt it made perfect sense.
Okay.
But I'm just the producer here. All right, here's Elmo. And for those listening, Elmo's playing two parts. He's play acting a conversation, first starting with the government and then with TikTok users.
What are you fucking doing over there, huh? I'm just dancing. Having a good time. Nope, you're out of here. You're fucking done. You're done. Can't have that here. Can't have fun times here. Fuck that shit. But what about the other guys? What about them? Oh, they're fine. They can party all they want. You're fucking done. Tired of your shit. What kind of bullshit is this? That's bullshit. Just trying to uphold the law. Gotta abide by the things with the law and stuff like you get it. No, it doesn't make any fucking sense, but I mean, sure, whatever you fucking say.
Wow.
Is there a better explainer?
Oh my gosh, Bill. Only you would find that, Elmo.
I just want to point out that my exact reason for why I think this was very frustrating for users of TikTok was that it is all social media companies doing the exact same practices.
Exactly.
It is every single one.
Exactly.
Every single one.
The missing component is that they don't have control over that one.
Or they see the results of people getting access to information that they did not particularly like, and instead of being like, hey, we want to censor that specific type of speech, we want to censor the messenger here. I also feel like forcing the app to kind of cozy up to probably somebody who a group of people who are already wanting to shift public conversation towards the right. Not going to be super enjoyable.
And so now Trump is taking credit and people are giving him credit for bringing TikTok back. But let's actually go through a little history of how this TikTok ban got started.
We're looking at TikTok. We may be banning TikTok.
Y'all forgot about this, didn't you? Yeah, Trump could save TikTok, but he also helped create this mess in the first place. That is until he realized he could be a star on the app and then was convinced that being pro-TikTok would help him sway young voters in the last election. But before this 180, back in July 2020, Trump wanted to ban TikTok as a punishment to China for their handling of the pandemic. And in August of that year, he issued an executive order to ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, to divest from US interests or face sanctions. He was one of the people repeating the argument that TikTok's data collection threatened the US, and he gave the thumbs up to a deal where Walmart and Oracle were supposed to have stakes in TikTok, which was eventually shelved. His attempt to ban TikTok was stopped by a federal judge who said that Trump was overstepping his authority, and then Biden actually revoked his original ban in 2021. See, a lot can happen in 4 years. Now, when the ban was signed in 2024, it was conveniently folded into a really big bill that also provided foreign aid to Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel, among other things. So, some key takeaways from this whole debacle. Number one, things get hidden in really big bills, which we're going to see more of, so it's time to pay attention. 2, public pressure can change minds when people come together on an issue. And 3, you don't get to be a hero for solving a problem you created in the first place.
Bingo.
Especially when you benefited from creating the problem.
Oh, she said that perfectly.
She did a good job.
So is or was TikTok a real national security threat? As Michael pointed out, they're not doing anything different than all the other social media companies are doing.
About the same level as everything else, Facebook and anything else.
I think it also is important that that specific question depends on which congressperson you're talking to.
Well, let's talk to AOC, shall we? AOC actually this is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes.
She actually gave a behind-the-scenes view as a congresswoman as to how this TikTok ban went down. So this is what she has to say.
Thank you for playing this bill.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about this TikTok ban, which I voted against, by the way, since this is coming up soon. Last year, when they brought this ban up for a vote, number one, they said it's a national security issue, I said, okay, that's serious. Let's see the case. Let's see the intelligence. Let's see what's going on. I can tell you that what was presented to all of the members voting on this thing was not very compelling. Like, there was no real information that was given that was a smoking gun, that was anything specific. It was very vague, not convincing, and frankly, it was not convincing to many other members as well. In fact, very high-ranking members on the House Foreign Affairs Committee came to me after the briefing, and they were very shocked and pretty surprised at the lack of substantive information in the briefing. They were genuinely expecting there to be some real or compelling intelligence shared that would substantiate the argument. And there just wasn't.
So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But she was underwhelmed, and I get it.
Well done, AOC. They have the same strategy. The strategy is you just withhold information. Like the last clip said, you fold really important stuff into a really big bill, and people read the headlines and they think that that's the bill. That ain't it. Dig a little deeper. And this is just another one of those things. But you know, I've always said, and I try to keep saying this so people can look at it different ways, but I've always said things like slavery and segregation, that stuff ain't dead. It's not dead. What has happened is it has changed, so it looks a little different to you. And then what has happened is gotten bigger. Individuals who probably did not experience these different types of oppression and suppression are starting to experience it more. And so when we look at what is happening from a social media standpoint, or this attempt at massive censorship, you're looking at another way of one key individual having control over what you have access to. And they kind of still pull from you things that you wouldn't give them freely, but they're able to take it from you. And in this, instead of talking about what we really need to be talking about, we're talking about an app. But the bigger issue here is protecting the individuals that are using the app, their privacy, their rights. And those are the things that are not being discussed here. And we miss it because you're talking about TikTok. It ain't about TikTok. It's about the use of you as an individual and your information through those type platforms that sometimes get covered up. And so we have to start calling it what it is. And when I saw AOC, that just made me say, everybody stop and listen.
Now, I cut AOC off because the clip goes on for another 2.5 minutes.
I saw her.
Everything you just said is what she said.
Oh, shut up.
So she goes on to say we should be focusing on privacy rights and data ownership and
Makes
protecting the child. She went on to say that. So there'll be a link to her full clip in the show notes. But everything you said is exactly what she said, and the two of you are on the same wavelength.
Yeah, go ahead, AOC.
So I was caught up in the middle of this. I was actually on my computer Saturday night uploading some TikTok clips from our show and got the weird message and said, sorry, no longer available, and hopefully President Trump will fix it. Then it comes back the next day, and on the app, everybody got the same pop-up message. Thank you to the efforts of President Trump. We can now come back online. And there's a lot of different reactions to that. The most common one was you don't get to take credit for fixing a problem you created. But I had one that I really hadn't heard anybody else say. And it goes back to something that Vice President Kamala Harris said, that Donald Trump can be played like a fiddle by foreign entities. So here I am, a foreign owner of this app, and I am going to lather Trump's behind with praise because he is easily motivated. And when they start putting messages like we put our trust in you and thank you, Trump, and we owe everything to you, and now magically the whole world is back to wanting to have TikTok. Yeah, they just played him.
Yeah.
He is not able to stand firm and can be manipulated by dictators all over the world. And we just saw it happen here with the TikTok app.
Yeah.
Adding to this, this company is just going around the will of Congress. That let's just say that there's this very important, national security reason that Congress voted to pass this bill, and yet this private company can now go around the will of Congress, which supposedly represents us, but directly to this one guy.
Isn't that scary?
Yeah.
What does that look like? I believe somebody told us.
So the latest developments here are that the White House, and this is Trump and his minions, are working with Oracle and other U.S. investors, and the CEO of Oracle is one of Trump's biggest donors. So now the White House is interfering and weighing the scales towards people that contributed to his campaign and saying, we're going to let you have stakes in this.
Well, he told the dude told us what he was going to do. He said he was going to take care of the people who took care of him and get the people who didn't.
All right, this next topic here, Jamil, I'm going to let you drive it because you were on the spot on January 17th. Controversial book banner and PragerU shill Ellen Weaver, who also claims to serve as South Carolina's Superintendent of Education, visited Greenwood as a keynote speaker at the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce's Morning Blend program. I tried, as you know, Jamil, to gain admittance, but they locked me out.
Yeah.
They knew who I was, and they shut the ticketing down.
That is not it. Not our sweet chamber.
They tried. I tried, but they said, no, Bill, you can't get in. So we sent undercover reporter Dr. Jamil Brooks to the scene. Dr. Brooks, what do you report?
Nothing much. I mean, I think that the key things that I thought
I expected more out of you, Jamil.
He's rolling his eyes at me, if you didn't know that, Michael. So, I'm not a fan of hers. I don't sugarcoat it at all. So she came, and it was a very small, I would almost say you could have cherry-picked that audience to make sure that you had the right people in there at the right time. It was at a time, and she came during a time where, of course, all educators were in school, but that's just the time that particular event happens. It's a regular event. It happens at 8 o'clock in the morning. She should have came, and it would have been great if she could have came when they were on the Christmas break. That way educators could have come and had a real close-up and personal instead of being handpicked by their district of who talks to her. Would have been perfect. But she was able to come. She came in and she talked about her plan for education for the state. And she talked about the tiers and how she was looking to include, of course, you want to make sure you can fund education from the teachers on down to whoever else. She wanted to talk about the different resources and the additional training. She even mentioned that Read to Succeed course, and I think she had maybe she helped develop that initial Read to Succeed course that we had to take as educators. But she talked about that. And in her, she referenced 2 of the schools that have done really well in our area, which was awesome that they're using what they got to do really well. And then there was one question that came, and I was already rolling eyes and frowning up. Because at the
was the audience allowed to ask questions?
At the end. She did her presentation and she opened it up for the questions. But at the beginning of her presentation, she throws in, I think it was Mary McLeod Bethune, and she was talking about how she belongs to us and other states try to take her, but she belongs to us and how she really looks up to her. And I'm thinking, girl, get that to somebody else because we really not listening. But anyway, at the end of the presentation, she opens the floor for questions. Our very own Bishop Oliver McCray stands up and asks a question that he's asked before to us in a different setting. And he said, well, Superintendent, and I'm paraphrasing, what about the school discipline problems? If there are any problems that are occurring on behavior situations. And I'm paraphrasing her response, but I was hoping that everybody in that room focused in on what she said. So one part of her response was that she believes that superintendents are like, their hands are being held by the OCR. So the Office of Civil Rights is holding their hands for disciplinary issues. And I looked at people at my table and I said, now what is OCR doing down here at the state level? You must be doing something real major to get OCR involved. And so she said she just feels like if the superintendents could truly do their job, you probably wouldn't have all those disciplinary issues. So in the show notes, they'll be able to go and look and see what issues the OCR is taking on. OCR is taking on things like sexual harassment, racial harassment, things of that nature.
So according to Ellen Weaver, if we can just sexually harass the students and throw racial epithets at them, then we'll have a better disciplinary situation.
I don't know. And I kept going, this is not the road we want to go down to say that OCR is holding tying the hands of superintendents hands behind their back, because when we're looking at the issues that OCR takes on, these are major issues that make it to OCR. And I don't think that's what Bishop McCray was asking. He was asking at the school level, when there are disciplinary issues, what do we think about those? Do we think those are impeding the process of learning? That's where he was going. But her response was OCR. She used that moment to talk about OCR instead of using that moment to talk about anything else that relates specifically to what's going on. And I kind of wanted to raise my hand and say, give me a specific situation where you feel that what you've seen through your research, that OCR has tied a superintendent's hands behind their back.
So how do you explain the photo you posted where you were buddying up next to Ellen? And
you will never see that. I'm not Snoop Dogg. You ain't gonna never see me.
But seriously, I did see.
I'm not Snoop.
I did see Bishop McCray side by side, getting a photo op with her, and I didn't understand that. And I wonder, and maybe it's just me being petty, but I don't know that I could stand next to a woman like that who's done so much harm, or representatives who have done harm like that, and just politely smile as, well, we're going to put politics aside, because it's those people's politics that have caused so much suffering in our state among the people. I just don't know if I could bring myself to smile.
Yeah, no, and I was standing there, and another young lady came up as Weaver was walking off. Can I get a picture with you? Can I get a picture with you? And I went, Like moments like this, we should really think about who we're going to stand beside and smile in these type moments. You just took a shot at an organization that makes sure that you're not being harassed, that protects the weak. When the big fish wants to come in and swallow you up, somebody has to stand in that gap. And what it seems like we're trying to do is eliminate anything that can stand in the gap that goes against what their ideologies are, and that's a problem. And so when she said the office of OCR, I looked at my group and I said, I hope people can see past this, but I'm telling you, the group that was in there did not see past this. They kind of went right along with it like, oh, great job. I thought about 2 bills that were introduced, and these will be in the show notes. So the Senate Bill 243, and then the House bill was, which one was that one? 3217. The Senate bill gives it's the parents' rights to educational rights, right? And in that bill, they're talking about how the parents have the right to pretty much, I'm paraphrasing so people understand it, to show their children their ways, to train their children up in the way that they should go, unless the government feels that you can't do so. And one of those rights says is you should be able to direct the moral and religious training of your child. But then the House comes right out with a bill that they introduce, and on this bill, it's Representative Beach, Rankin, McCravey, and Vaughn. And what they want to do is make it a requirement to display the 10 Commandments. So if I have the right as a parent to morally train my child in the way that they should go, how do you turn around and produce another bill that says, but while you doing it, I'm going to go ahead and put these commandments on the wall and make sure your children see them every day?
Have you met Superintendent Weaver at all, Michael?
I have, in different aspects. She came to spoke to the Columbia Chamber. I'm sure she gave the same kind of presentation. She did not bring up her opposition to the Office of Civil Rights. I don't remember, at least. I have met her. I have spoken to her, but I also have seen the wide work that has been done, specifically to try to produce a new policy so that we can censor books statewide. I've also seen the superintendent is supposed to be in charge of public schools in South Carolina, and yet she's advocating for these vouchers that will take money away from these public schools.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what it'd be like to have a state superintendent actually defend the institution she's in charge of? Wouldn't that be something?
I have also heard the same things where she will cherry pick specific quotes without context from historical African American figures in American history to support her broader thing, but without any finer context of what was Frederick Douglass doing during that time? Yeah. Oh, what was the greater context for Mary McLeod Bethune teaching African American women across the state of South Carolina? What preceded that? What prevented them from going to schools in their local area?
Well, Jamil, we appreciate you being there on the spot. Did you want to wrap up on that subject?
Just to know that if she's doing all of that, I bet you that's none of that PragerU. She's not going to use it in the capacity that it should be. So I don't think you want to just use black folk out there just so you can say you talked about a little bit of black people too, because we see that. And then the other thing that I would say is that it is really important for parents to take time and see what is going on in their schools and to show up and to make sure that you are visible. They need to see you, because if not, things will continue to shape shift in front of your eyes, and you and your children will be in a position that you cannot dig yourself out of fast enough.
So this last bit is going to be saved for a little bonus episode that the original podcast took over 17 hours to record.
It did.
So this little bit I just couldn't leave out, especially not with Michael here. A couple of leftover clips that didn't fit any specific topic, but having seen them, they were so powerful. We just had to include it on our show and share it with the audience.
Okay.
So the first two are actually from AOC as well.
All these journalists are like, Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Are you going to the inauguration? Let me make myself clear. I don't celebrate rapists. So no, I'm not going to the inauguration tomorrow.
There is nobody who cuts through the BS better than AOC.
Well done.
She cut right through it.
Well done.
AOC also wanted to talk about this administration after their first couple of days dismantling everything that our country stood for.
I'm going to tell you all right now, they do not give a damn about the cost of eggs. They do not give a damn about making your mortgage payment lower. They don't care about making your prescriptions more affordable. As a matter of fact, one of the first things that Donald Trump did was revoke the Biden executive order that lowered prescription drug prices. This is like the whole game right here. They are here for the fossil fuel CEOs. Los Angeles has been on fire. People have lost everything. everything. And we haven't seen even a single shred of urgency from this Republican majority about even a disaster supplemental to help people get the FEMA assistance and everything that they need.
You know what? I had a thought. Let me back up to Weaver. I don't know if y'all have seen this, but I want y'all to look at State Superintendent's Facebook page. She traveled recently to Washington, D.C. I believe that was probably on our dime. And she went to attend a march or some type recognition for all of the children that have been lost to abortion. And she wanted to show support for that event, and she wanted to recognize the individual who had been doing so much work towards that. Now, that is on a state superintendent's page. You traveled to D.C. to show support for all of the children. This don't make sense to me. The children that were lost due to abortion. What if you write that out, it still don't look right.
Not even, the right to bodily autonomy taken away from 50% of the population.
Not even let me make sure these children eat. No.
Not even protecting those kids.
Oh, no.
Not even protecting those kids from, people in their lives who are wanting to do harm to them.
Not even making sure the parents have health care.
What she's bemoaning are all of the potential private and religious school students that she's not able to give funds to.
Ooh, good assessment.
Right? That's what she's bemoaning. It could have just made all of those owners of those private schools richer, and now they're not here to do so. That's my guess. So this last one is probably one of the most powerful statements I've ever heard. This came from a gentleman who spoke literally 2 days after the election about his thoughts, and it's resonated with millions across the country.
Well, it's 2 days after the election, and yesterday I had a really hard time trying to pinpoint why I don't think I've ever felt more heartbroken and hopeless as I do now. There have been a lot of times in my life when I've been disappointed, when I've been depressed, when I've been angry, but I have never felt these things to the depth that I felt yesterday. But I gave it some thought, and I think I figured it out. The reason I'm so heartbroken, destroyed, and absolutely disgusted with the results of this election is that it invalidates everything I have ever been taught about how I should live my life, and everything I've tried to teach my kids. So it's an absolute betrayal to realize at 57 years of age that when it comes really down to it, over half of this country really doesn't value the notions of being kind, being generous, loving your neighbor, being accepting, having empathy, showing understanding, being truthful, being ethical in business, being sensible and level-headed, not being a bully, not being selfish, and not being a total asshole. And because I've been taught these things my entire life, it's really easy for me to see that Donald Trump is a vile and despicable human being. He exhibits everything that I have been taught to set my sights against in order to be a good, functioning member of society. But now, over half our country supports this person and believes that he's the one who's going to make America great. Well, hey, here's a secret. Someone who has worked so hard at sowing discord is never going to do anything to unite us. That's his big lie, because he doesn't benefit from Americans coming together. He and all the Tucker Carlsons and Alex Jones out there, they profit from the rage that they're able to manufacture. So don't tell me it's okay if we disagree, as if this is akin to our individual preferences for wine or toilet paper. This is not a simple disagreement. This is you telling me that the values I've held dear my entire life have no meaning or place in the real world. This is you telling me that I should be shrewd, deceptive, cruel, and intolerant. This is you telling me that the type of person you really admire and look up to is a rich, entitled, narcissistic, criminally convicted pussy grabber. And if you're one of those guys out there that likes Trump because, well, he says what's on his mind, he tells it like he sees it, he doesn't have a filter. Yeah, Sometimes you need a filter. There was a time, not that long ago, when being an asshole wasn't cool. If you were a shitty person, you just kept a lot of that to yourself, and society was all the better for it. But now it's all, let's make America great again. And what I'd like to know is, what specific time in American history are you talking about? What year exactly? Because for a lot of folks, this right now, this current time in American history is the greatest. And you know that. And for some reason, you don't like it. It's like this crazy idea that giving certain rights to someone else somehow takes some of yours away. Or are you just pissed that you're not special anymore? And so you can feel special again, you'll be more than happy to drag us all back 70 years when our black brothers and sisters had to drink from separate water fountains, or back when if you were non-straight, you had to stay in the closet. Personally, I'd like to go back to a time when assholes had to stay in the closet. And don't tell me, oh, don't be stupid. You're getting it all wrong. It's really about none of that. It's really about the economy. As if that excuses the behavior. You're willing to overlook all the other fascist rhetoric because all that's doing is showing your wives and your daughters and minorities and LGBTQ and other marginalized groups that you're completely willing to throw them under the bus as long as you can save 5 cents a gallon on gasoline. Did your stock portfolio get a bump yesterday? Well, good for you. Maybe you can sit offshore on your new boat and watch this country burn to the ground. The reality is that as a country, we had the opportunity to take the high road, to stand for something higher than our basest instincts, to stand for equality and fairness, to stand for the overall good of everyone. But over half of y'all kept us from taking it. And the whole world was watching. And you know who else was watching? Your non-white friends, your non-straight friends, your wives, your kids, your daughters. So to anyone who actually does claim to value those higher ideals, you know, the ones I mentioned earlier, the ones we were taught as kids in Sunday school. Yeah, Christians, remember Sunday school? If you claim to hold any of those same values, but are at the very same time enamored with Trump and perfectly pleased with the outcome of the election, me and millions like me deserve a fucking explanation.
Gosh, well done.
So I know that was lengthy, but if there was a guy who kind of summarized everything we were thinking, it's this guy here.
That's it.
Said it perfectly.
Golly.
Am I leaving us on a happy note here or what?
Yeah, he gave me hope.
Well, that's a wrap for this episode of Black, White, and Blue in the South. We hope... Let me try that again, because I think I said in the South.
I didn't hear that. I heard South.
Let me try again. And that's a wrap for this episode of Black, White, and Blue in the South. We hope you enjoyed what you heard. Please take a minute and leave us a rating and a review of our show. It'll cost you nothing, yet it'll mean everything to us. If you do, it'll trim our show down from 5 hours down to a more manageable time. If you are a blue dot in a red sea, keep the faith, keep up the hard work. Change only happens over many years of work and dedication. And Michael Ayer, we thank you for spending time with us today. Yeah. You gave up your Sunday to be here on the show. Yeah. And so we thank you and wish you the best in your campaign for South Carolina Democratic Party 3rd Vice Chair.
Yay.
We're going to close out today with the words of a man who was a musician, a poet, and a visionary ahead of his time. His name is Frank Zappa. Let's listen to what he had to say in an interview on the Charlie Rose Show in 1988. You weren't even born then, Michael, were you?
I'm so sorry.
Neither you, Jamil, right?
I was here 10 years.
Okay, so
all right.
I was almost out of high school at that point. So here's what Frank Zappa had to say that just resonates to this very minute.
What I'm saying is that if you were going to be a Republican, you ought to focus on what Republicans are supposed to be good at, which is let's do business, okay?
Yeah.
And I think business is good for the whole world. People like to do business. But when you start trying to legislate morality, you've got a problem. You know, it doesn't work. It hasn't worked in the past. It won't work in the future.
Yeah, but if anything goes, there's got to be some sense of responsibility, don't you think?
There's a difference between responsibility and adherence to dogma. When the dogma becomes legislation, that's when you have the danger. I have this horrible fear that the United States could wend its way toward being a fascist theocracy. The cross converted into a symbol of fascism in the service of politics. This is bad.
He was onto something there.
Oh.
A prophet.
You saw that? He called that out.
He is a prophet.
Oh, dang it. Dang it, dang it, dang it. Wow.